The supposed confirmation of a first international sale for the export variant of the Sukhoi Su-57 stealth fighter, a transaction touted by Russian industrial and export agencies, is shadowed by a cascade of profound and potentially crippling disadvantages for any prospective buyer. The very foundation of this announcement is alarmingly weak, resting not on a definitive, official joint statement from the governments of both the seller and the buyer, but rather on a series of promotional declarations from Russian entities like Rosoboronexport and the United Aircraft Corporation, whose primary motive is marketing, not transparent reporting. The conspicuous silence from Moscow's highest governmental levels, and more importantly, from the presumed client nation of Algeria, suggests a deal that is either far from finalized, fraught with unresolved contention, or perhaps a mere public relations maneuver designed to project an image of success and viability for a troubled program. This lack of concrete, high-level diplomatic confirmation transforms the entire narrative into one of speculative risk, leaving the potential customer in a precarious position of uncertainty. Should this deal proceed towards the optimistic 2025 operational timeline mentioned by Russian officials, the purchasing nation would be willingly stepping into the role of a test subject for an immature and operationally unproven platform. The Su-57, even in its domestic configuration for the Russian aerospace forces, exists in remarkably small numbers and its combat record is ambiguous at best, with its limited use in conflicts like the war in Ukraine suggesting a lack of confidence in its capabilities, a fear of losing a high-value asset, or an inability to deploy it effectively in a contested environment. An export customer would receive the Su-57E, a variant that would inevitably have its own unique set of teething problems, software bugs, and integration challenges, all of which the first operator would have to identify and resolve at its own expense and peril, far from the primary design bureaus and with a much smaller support infrastructure than the Russian military itself possesses. The technical compromises inherent in the Su-57 program represent a significant and enduring drawback. The aircraft's stealth characteristics have been a subject of intense skepticism among Western analysts, who point to design elements, such as the engine inlets and overall shaping, that appear to be inferior to those of American counterparts like the F-22 and F-35, resulting in a larger radar cross-section. A nation purchasing the Su-57E under the illusion of acquiring a true peer-level stealth fighter could find its very expensive investment as dangerously detectable by the advanced radar systems it is meant to evade. Furthermore, the persistent and well-documented delays with the aircraft's intended next-generation ISDLE-A30 engine mean that any delivery in the near to mid-term, such as the proposed 2025 date, would almost certainly be fitted with the interim AL-41, F1 engines. These are essentially upgraded fourth-generation powerplants, lacking the supercruise efficiency, thrust, and thermal signature reduction of a true fifth-generation engine, thereby fundamentally compromising the aircraft's performance envelope and its stealth profile, making it a fifth-generation airframe with a 4.5-generation heart. The logistical and maintenance implications for an operator like Algeria would be nothing short of a nightmare. Establishing a completely new and highly specialized supply chain for an aircraft as complex as the Su-57E is a monumental undertaking. This chain would be entirely dependent on a single source, Russia, a nation currently under severe and extensive international sanctions. The reliability of this supply chain for critical spare parts, specialized munitions, and ground support equipment is therefore extremely questionable. A single grounded aircraft awaiting a component that cannot be delivered due to sanctions or Russian production bottlenecks could render a multi-billion-dollar investment useless. The cost of training pilots, ground crews, and technicians to handle a platform so radically different from existing fleets would be exorbitant, placing an immense and potentially unsustainable strain on the defense budget. This financial burden extends far beyond the initial purchase price. The life cycle costs of operating a fleet of fifth-generation fighters are astronomically high, encompassing fuel, extensive maintenance schedules, hangar and runway upgrades, and the continuous need for software updates. For a nation facing other economic and social priorities, diverting such a vast sum to a boutique fleet of unproven fighters could be seen as a ruinous misallocation of resources. Moreover, the decision to procure such a high-profile Russian weapons system carries severe geopolitical risks. It could trigger sanctions from the United States under legislation like CAATSA, countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act, leading to diplomatic isolation and cutting off the nation's access to Western military technology, training partnerships, and financial systems. This would create a strategic dependency on Russia, a partner whose long-term stability and ability to support its clients is increasingly in doubt. The aircraft, rather than being a strategic asset, could become a geopolitical albatross, creating more problems in international relations than it could ever solve in a potential conflict. The absence of an official statement is therefore not just a minor detail, it is a glaring red flag, pointing to the immense and multifaceted disadvantages that make the acquisition of the Su-57E a gamble of the highest order.